Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. My guest today is broadcasting live all the way from Germany, where I hear it's very hot and they don't have air conditioning. So I guess I can't complain, even though it's 118 here today, because I do have air conditioning. Her name is Justina. She'll pronounce her last name for you because I know I'm just going to do it. And she is going to be talking about how to finally end binge eating once and for all. She suffered from this for years, and she knows how to get out of it. And she's also going to be making a wonderful recipe, a carrot cake oatmeal in the Instant Pot. Please welcome Justina to the show. It's nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too, Chef AJ. Such an honor to be on your show. And yeah, I can introduce myself. So I'm Justina from Germany, Cologne. I live here with my husband, Michael. Originally, I was born actually in Russia, in Siberia. And I am trained and certified by Dr. Doug Lyle's approach for motivation and well-being called Esteem Dynamics. And I help people to get back to balance with their diets. And today we will focus especially on binge eating. I suffered from binge eating for almost 15 years, so I know exactly every nasty angle of this nasty thing. And I hope to help you to get through this today. And on the side, I will make some delicious carrot cake oatmeal. I eat a couple of times a week with my husband. So I will start and I show you how I make the carrot cake. And in the meanwhile, while it's cooking, I will talk a bit about binge eating. Great. So, okay, I will start. So the recipe is actually in the show notes if you're interested to cook it. I use for the recipe in the show notes is for one portion, but I like to batch cook, and I do 3 of these, and I use a 2/3 cup of oats, 3 of this. I don't know if you can see it. I'm so sorry. My kitchen is so tiny. I hope you can see everything.
We can see it. That's new. Is the same measurement in Germany? Is it cups, or do you use
no?
Measurements?
Actually, that's a good question. In Germany, we use grams, but because I'm almost living in this plant-based community, I might personally myself always use cups. It's just easier. Yeah, it's roughly 60 grams for you Europeans who are watching. Yeah, and I use 3 medium-sized carrots, so I have roughly this size, and I shredded them, and then I use 6 of these 2/3 cups. I already measured it out. And cinnamon, guys. I love cinnamon, so I use a half teaspoon for 1 portion. Here are 3. And some grounded vanilla powder.
I love vanilla powder. So you grind?
Yeah.
I've never seen that people can grind the vanilla themselves.
This is so delicious, and I wish you can smell it. It's so good.
I've never seen a self grinder like that. I'm guessing you got that in Germany.
Yeah, we have this in Germany. So okay, now we have all the ingredients. I stir everything. I hope you can see it. Oh, one important ingredient is missing: bananas. So you can use a regular banana, but I enjoy using, or I prefer frozen ones. I don't know what happens when they cook, but they get more creamier. And I use for 1 portion, I use roughly a medium-sized banana.
Well, all those ingredients sound like the ingredients in my cram muffins.
Yeah, really? Okay. Yeah. And this is the cram oatmeal.
And you're going to talk about a little bit later, there's a difference between cramming and binging.
I will talk about, yes. When I do this recipe for my husband, for example, or other family members, they eat a bit of sugar or some sweetener. I use 1 tablespoon of sweetener of your choice, but now I do it without. So whatever you prefer, so you can use one or not. And or if it's not sweet enough for you, but you don't use sugars, you can just take 1 banana. It's also pretty sweet.
Is that the 8-quart InstantPot?
Yes.
That's my favorite one. And were you
Yeah,
able to get
mine as well?
Can you get these in Germany?
Yeah, on Amazon we can get them. Yeah. So I put manual for 15 minutes. That's it. And now we will wait until it's ready. Yeah, and we can talk about binge eating a bit if you want, if you have some questions, or I can
I think you should start with your story, because people see a very beautiful, fit, trim woman and they're thinking, well, what kind of problems does she have?
Yeah, that's the thing. So I come from an obese family. We are blessed with thick genes. And when I was a kid, I was roughly around 9 or 10 years old. I was so chubby and kids made fun of me. So I took out a piece of paper and I wrote, I'm gonna be thin. I didn't know how to get thin back then. And it took me, I don't know, I was 15 years later or 70 years later to find out how to get healthy and slim. And I started my first diet with 13. And my life was just dieting. All my life was around dieting. And I never was able to hold my weight I lost. And at some time, or after a couple of years, I developed binge eating and I did not know what happened. So I went to psychotherapy, I went to Christian therapy, to all kinds of therapy approaches. And they never understood that I was not able to keep a healthy weight by eating our standard Western diet. It was impossible for me. And then they told me, yeah, Justina, just accept that you're being overweight. It's totally fine. We are not defining about your weight and so on. But not only being overweight was a problem, but I could not control those foods, those highly pleasurable foods. And then in 2013 or 14 roundabout, I found about the plant-based community, about whole foods, and about Dr. Doug Lyle, about you, Chef AJ. And my binges were almost gone. But from time to time, I still had, binge eating phases, and I could not understand why this was happening. And a couple of years later, Dr. Lyle explained what is happening, and binge eating is a reaction of constant dieting. So when you diet, sooner or later, you will, or most people develop binge eating, even in the plant-based community. I talked to women who restrict their calories for breakfast, for lunch, and are wondering why they binge at evening. And what binge eating is at the end, it's a famine defense mechanism. Our body wants to make sure we don't starve. So you can imagine, when you start restricting your food, it's as if you push a button in your brain or in your nervous system that wants to binge. You almost cannot resist those urges. They are so strong. And people confuse it oftentimes with cramming. Cramming is something that is also a famine defense mechanism. And because imagine that our ancestors, the number one problem our ancestors faced was starvation. So therefore, it's a clever mechanism in our bodies to cram in foods. For example, our ancestors, they rarely had rich food around. And when they had rich food around, let's say for once a month or so, it was a good idea to cram in as much as possible in a very short time. And that's what people experiencing nowadays. They cram in so fast the food. And we do this because our ancestors had to make sure that their partners or other group members would not get more than them. And they did this to make sure to be prepared for the next famine. So it's a clever idea at the end. Being overweight, storing excess fat on our bodies, having a big stomach, or less sensitive stretch and nutrient receptors are all mechanisms to avoid famine. Guys, your body just wants to make sure that you do not starve yourself. And the chaos in our world is that we live in a world where it's almost impossible to follow our instincts, because our instincts always want the richest food that's around. And that's the pleasure trap you maybe are already heard about, aka that the food we are eating nowadays is too processed. And when I talk to my clients, I try to help them get back to balance. And mostly they are stuck in this thinking that this is for emotional reasons or something like that. But when I ask them, what are you eating typically? There is always some kind of restriction in their diet. And even for some people, when they do intermittent fasting, it can trigger a binge. And don't understand me wrong. Some people, they love intermittent fasting. But the only group of people I would recommend doing intermittent fasting is who naturally never ate breakfast. Like you, Chef AJ, I heard you talking about that you never ate breakfast. But bingers or binge eaters, their number one goal is to lose weight. So sometimes they do 5 diets at once, intermittent fasting, potatoes only. They do all kinds of restriction, or only vegetables and only a small amount of starch. And this leads them to this binge eating habits. And so I try, or my work is to help people to get back to balance with their diet and make small, tiny adjustments in their diets. And one solution is, for example, your program, Chef AJ, is where we get to balance, or McDougall program is where we get to balance. And you know what? Modern life, there are so many aspects where we get out of balance. Dr. Lyle and I recently talked about a study or a research that was done in Finland, in Europe, about how much we spend indoors. Can you imagine, guys? We spend 92% of our time indoors. Although being in nature is crucial for our health, being in nature lowers our stress hormone like cortisol. And those researchers, they developed a very interesting rule, and I guess this rule is very helpful for you guys. They call it the 25-3 rule. So the 20 stays for spending 20 minutes 3 times a week in a park, in a city park or so. But it's very important. Don't do it with your cell phone, because when you use your cell phone, you don't have the same benefits as without. And on top of that, spend 5 hours each month in a semi-wild forest state park, for example. And the 3 is for spending 3 days in a year in somewhere off-grid, camping, for example. You can do it solo or with your friends. And what those researchers found out, they did a study on US military vets, that their PTSD symptoms and stress levels almost dropped to 30% by just being camping in nature. Their total well-being increased, and their mental health in general. So guys, being in nature is so important. It's when we are indoors, too much spending time indoors in our modern world, something gets out of balance. When we restrict our calories, something gets out of balance. When we don't get enough sleep, something gets out of balance. Our modern life, with our modern life, we spend so much time indoors watching at our screens. And what is very interesting, a couple of weeks ago, I watched podcast on YouTube with Rich Roll and Michael Walker, the sleep scientist or neuroscientist. And he talked that people are not aware that they're actually tired at 9 or 10 p.m. But because they're consuming so much on social media, that's keeping them awake, so they don't feel the sense of tiredness. And there are so many ways that come together that bring our healthy life or human being out of balance. And binge eating is such a big topic, even in the plant-based community. And people sometimes don't want to understand, or having difficulties to trust the process. They always, when I ask them what they're eating, they always have some restriction in their diet. A restriction can even be not eating enough starch, or eating too many vegetables and not having enough room left for starch. So yeah, guys, this is my work. I help people to get back in balance and explain them the concepts. And yeah, I have a heart for binge eaters, because I suffered from binge eating for almost 15 years. And I found out very interesting things that helped me, and that I learned at Dr. Lyle. And for example, I eat the most, or the majority of my calories I eat for breakfast and lunch. And this helps me to have a stable glucose level. And I don't have the urge anymore to eat huge amounts of foods. It can happen sometimes, from time to time. For example, when it's watermelon season, I enjoy, and I can have a huge watermelon, or a half of a huge watermelon myself. Yeah, so this is what I'm sharing with my clients.
I just want people to know that you do work with people privately. You're the only one that I know of that Dr. Lyle recommends, because you're not only certified in his work, you've also worked with him. And I completely agree with you. I was bulimic from the age of 19 to the age of 25, 6 years. And it was only because I had a history of 6 years of restricting when I was anorexic.
Yeah.
And like you say, the people that I work with weight loss, the ones that are still binging, it's always restriction. And not just restriction of calories, but like you say, it's almost always they're still afraid to eat starch. So they'll eat a lot of vegetables, and they're still restricting. So here's a great question from Lauren. What exactly is binge eating? Is it eating a lot, like you can't just eat a few of something, or need to eat it all? So how would you divide binge eating? And is it different than bulimia? And does it matter whether or not somebody actually induces vomiting or exercises? What are the parameters?
So binge eating and bulimia, they almost start at the same time. So both groups restrict their calories, and after the restriction, they have an urge to eat huge amounts of especially junk food, very high calorie dense foods. The difference between bulimics and binge eater is that bulimics throw up and or vomit, and binge eaters, they don't do that. Sometimes they over-exercise. This is something I experienced myself. When I binged, the next day I went for a 2-hour run. So on average, I exercised 2 hours a day at that time. So yeah, that's the difference between bulimic and binge eating. But binge eating is always a result after some period of restriction.
Yeah, because you don't see people that haven't restricted as people that have binge. And I think a lot of times, if people are so used to dieting, or even used to the standard American diet, where they're not necessarily eating large volumes of food, but it's so calorically dense, they don't understand caloric density and how you actually sometimes need to eat more than you're used to eating. And it was interesting. I just spent some time well, I don't think she watches the show, so I'll say it, with my best friend from childhood. And I generally don't allow animal products in my house, but I've been friends with her for 50 years. And literally all she ate was hard-boiled eggs with salt and cheese. She didn't eat any fruits or vegetables. And the volume of food she was eating was so small. And
Yeah,
I mean, and it was like, how do people not get hungry when they're
yeah,
eating just animal products or animal products and processed food without the fiber?
yeah. That's the thing. And you know what, Chef AJ, people fear to eat large amounts of food. Still, I have so many people that come to me and say, oh, Justina, I cannot eat sweet potatoes. I overeat on sweet potatoes. Then I ask them, yeah, so tell me, what did you eat for breakfast and for lunch? I don't eat, I skip breakfast, and for lunch, I just ate a salad, maybe 200 calories. Of course, you will eat 2 pounds or more of sweet potatoes at dinner time. That's completely normal. And that's the thing. And another thing is, many clients that I have, they try to be at the lowest BMI. And our weight is 70% heritable. So for some people, it's just not in their genes to be at the lowest part of the of a healthy BMI. You know, this is a range between a bit more on the lower or a bit more on the heavier side. But as still, when you are in this range, you are still healthy, and this is manageable with a whole food plant-based diet. And many women set themselves up because they still try to restrict at some degree because they want to reach the lowest side of the BMI. And that's also, yeah, a tricky one.
Right. That I always tell people, your lowest attainable weight isn't necessarily your sustainable weight.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So here's an interesting comment from Violet, and I know that you and Dr. Lyle don't agree with this, at least when it comes to binging. Trauma in my life led me to binge eating.
Trauma in her life led her to binge eating. Okay, I guess what people confuse with binge eating is, we humans, we always do a cost-benefit analysis. And when we have some stress or difficult life situations, our cost-benefit analysis shifts. So we don't have plenty enough of time, or we don't have energy to do healthy cooking, and we want pleasure right now. And of course, you get from highly calorie-dense foods, you will get more pleasure. But when we would not live in modern world without all those calorie-dense foods, you would never binge. That's the thing. And what I oftentimes think, that people forget about the starting point about their binge eating. At some point in their life, and some people I talk to, they binge for decades. Maybe when they were in their teenage years, they started a restricting diet, and they started to binge, and they forgot about the restriction part. That's the thing. So, you know, I understand that people tell me also that they binge in stressful situations, or when they are emotionally drained or so. But the thing is that we forgot about the moments where we binge at happy situations. Guys, I binged at happy situations so many times, but we tend to forget about those. But because the negative situation, when you binge in a negative situation, this reinforces this thinking pattern. So I would not agree with this, that we are eating emotionally, because I think when people would just have healthy foods in their house, and just maybe when they have a stressful situation and just eat a few more potatoes than usually, they would not gain weight. But most people who binge have junk food in the house. It doesn't matter how often I tell them don't have them in the house, they still have junk food in the house. And of course, when we are in a stressful situation, we just want pleasure, and getting some pleasure from junk food is easy accessible. And maybe the person who's asking is confusing this by just overeating or cramming on junk food, because that's the thing we talked at the beginning. Cramming and binging, it feels technically the same, but it's different. Binging is always a result of restriction, and cramming is because when we have rich food around, it's like signals to our nervous system, eat me, eat me, eat me. And when you are in a stressful situation, you have less energy to focus on making good decisions. And that could be the reason why you go to highly calorie dense foods in stressful situations.
Absolutely. And so Angel says, so eating in stages, like AJ says, veg first should help stop the desire to binge. I don't think so. It's the starch that stops the desire.
Yeah, it's the starch. And you know what I share with my clients? Because binge eaters, their number one goal is weight loss. They are obsessed with weight loss. And because I sometimes tell to my clients, in the past, I would do everything to get rid of the excess weight. Even when Dr. Lai would tell me, just eat stones, I would eat stones for the rest of my life, you know. And when I work with my clients who suffer from binge eating, our goal is first to get rid of the binges. And you know what the funny thing is? That many of them, they lose weight while around this process, because they stop binging on junk food and therefore don't have the excess calories in. And then they lose weight without even trying to lose weight. But every time they try to lose weight, they are still too focused on a restriction. And when you're doing something for decades or years, it's hard to break this habit. For some people, for some not. Some people who heard for the first time about the message, they are, I would say, healed. I mean, binge eating, and Dr. Lyle and I talked about this throughout the years a lot. At the end, eating or binge eating is not a disorder. It's just a famine defense mechanism. Your body is trying not to starve. It's not in disorder. When you restrict, your nervous system kicks in and tries to defense the restriction. Yeah.
I'm typing that. That's brilliant. Binge eating is not a disorder. It's just a famine defense mechanism. Brilliant. Don't you think, Justina, that the addition of chemicals like sugar, fat, and salt also make binging worse? Because
especially oil and sugar. But you know what, Chef AJ? For some people, it's actually helpful. I know it's very controversial, this SOS free approach. And my approach is, when you can do SOS free without and feeling good, then do it. This is the perfect diet. But for some people, we live in environments with family members where salt is around, sugar is around. They have to cook for family members. And what I found out, also for me personally, I try to be salt. So I am oil and sugar, almost sugar-free completely. And I tried to be salt-free as well. And so I made an experiment for 1 year. I did not eat any sprinkle of salt, none. And it did not make a difference for me personally. But when I started to use a tiny bit of salt on my vegetables, when I enjoyed my vegetables, so it helped me actually to eat more healthy foods. But this is a very individual thing. For some people, it can help when they hate eating vegetables or don't enjoy them at all, to sprinkle a little bit of salt. I see it, or my approach is like Dr. McDougall's one. If the tiny bit of salt is making you eat the healthy food, then go for it. But when it's making you to overeat on other food, then stop it. You have to find the balance in between.
Right.
But the most important thing is oil, to get rid of the oil. Then the sugar, and the last is the salt. But salt is for all the hardest one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why people have to know themselves, because like you say, you can have a with salt, but I know some people where it's such an appetite stimulant and trigger. I know for me, I don't even overeat unless there's salt in the food, because it's just doesn't do anything to my circuits.
Yeah, that's it. So I eat the same amount when I eat salt on it or without salt. It doesn't make a difference. And my weight, I did not lose any single pound when I was salt free. I lost a few pounds when I introduced a bit of salt, because I enjoyed my vegetables. I cook for my family, and so it's easier. It was just easier for me.
Great. Just for a moment, I want to Violet for the super chat. And there's two questions that don't have to do with binging, but I don't want to miss them, so I'll ask them. One is, do you speak both German and Russian?
Yes, I speak German and Russian. My German is, of course, better because I grew up in Germany, and most of my family's members speak only German, but I speak Russian with my father. Yeah.
Nice. So you're basically trilingual. I only know 2 words in Russian: Собака, чемодана, 3 words, and вечеринка. I only know how to say dog, suitcase, and party in Russian. That's
enough. That's the most important thing you need to know.
It's funny. And there's a question on the Instant Pot. You mentioned putting it on menu setting. What is that? She doesn't have that setting on hers.
Manual setting.
Oh, you said manual. I see.
Manual.
Yeah,
sorry.
She wrote menu. Sorry. No, I'm sure you said it right. So she means manual. Everybody has manual. That's the manual button.
That's the manual.
Every Instant Pot has that. That's terrific. So people are saying, but if you don't restrict your food, how can you lose weight? And people have to understand that we're not overweight because we eat too much food. We're overweight because we eat too much calories. And when they understand calorie density, you're actually eating the same amount of food, probably more. But that is why it's so critical to any weight loss success.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's still in their minds eating large foods. I don't know, maybe some women find it unsexy or so, eating large amounts of food. I eat 6 to 10 pounds of food. And the thing is, and I like Dr. Goldhammer once said, the more you eat of the healthy food, the less room you have for unhealthy food. And it's not, and Dr. Lyle has a very nice quote. It's not, there is no right amount to eat. There's only the right food to eat. I mean, a zucchini is almost, I don't know how many zucchinis you can get for a pound for 100 calories. This is such a huge amount.
Zucchini is actually even lower. It's about 67 calories a pound.
Or 60, that's the thing. So people have to understand the calorie density, but also they have to understand that our sense of being satisfied is not only satisfied by volume. We need to activate those nutrient receptors, and that is going to happen with having enough starch in your diet. So your diet can get out of balance when you have too much vegetables or too much raw food, because you don't have enough room left for healthy starches that keep you satisfied long term.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm looking, I saw another question about this. Oh, here's one from Alyssa. She says, perhaps you can tell us more about how you transformed. I don't know if you have your before picture, but you were quite overweight.
I was 35 pounds heavier than now. 35, yeah.
Yeah. So did you first get a handle on the binging and then the weight came off? Is that how it worked for you?
It was a combination. I already, some weight already got off just because I ate healthy foods. But I still, ate some processed foods, because back then I was not aware of the whole foods plant-based. I only knew plant-based. And the thing is, in the past, people, I could hide my binge eating very well, because I was very rigid with my exercising, and I grit my teeth to eat only small portions, to only eat 2 meals a day. So I could manage my weight to some degree, but at some point the binges felt over me, and I gained more and more weight, and I was done. Yeah. But it was a process like this, I would say. It was not, sometimes you see those successful stories. In 6 months, I lost 70 pounds. No, that was not for me. So it took me a very long time to lose weight. And that's also important to know. I mean, you, Chef AJ, you once said that it took you 27 months to lose weight.
I know. People just see the end result, but they didn't know me. I wasn't then it took 27 months for me to lose 47 pounds, but I wasn't really doing it for weight loss. I was doing it for health and
for health.
To get a calm, stable brain, to get off all the drug-like foods. But people want a quick fix, and that's the problem. Is that when they go on these crazy diets like weighing and measuring, like keto, they will lose weight quickly, but they're not really losing fat. And they put a carb in their mouth, they get 4 pounds heavier on the scale from glycogen and water. And then they say, see, carbs make you fat, when it's the furthest from the truth, because carbs, if they're complex carbohydrates, they not only don't make you fat, they make you thin. And that is the only way you're ever going to stop binging long term, because I've heard Dr. Lyle says it's always restriction, and specifically the restriction from starch.
Yeah, restriction from starch. And you know what, guys, what also helped me in the beginning when I was transitioning, it takes time to find out what's working for you. For me personally, in the beginning, I almost ate only potatoes. And after a couple of months, I started to cram on beans and on rice. And then I introduced more of beans and of rice, of a bit more. I put a bit more density in, and so my cramming also drops. So that is also helpful. Find out what's working for you. Some people don't like beans, but I would try not to be too low in calorie density. Find the right balance.
What a lot of people say, well, I overeat on potatoes, I overeat on rice, but I think they don't understand how much food they really need to eat in general. And because they're looking for quick weight loss, and they don't listen to Dr. Lyle in his lecture, The Slow Fast Way, and realize that you only lose about 2 ounces of fat a day. They don't realize that the only reason it feels like they're binging on it is because they don't even know what a normal portion of food is anymore.
They confuse it. And guys, you cannot compare your portions to a standard Western diet. You will always eat more than your friends or family members who are not whole foods, plant-based. I mean, you know what's the funny thing? My family members say, you are not our daughter. How can it be that you are so slim and we are so overweight? Look at how much you can eat. Something is different in us, but I just eat different foods than them. That's the only difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I saw another question here, actually, a couple. And if you're watching on Facebook, unfortunately, you don't get to see the chat. So please consider hopping on over to YouTube. Jazz says, one thing I struggle with is compulsively ordering takeout. I do SOS free at home with no junk food in the house at all, but I still get intense cravings and order takeout. How to stop? I don't know. Get rid of your cell phone. I don't know.
Yeah, this is a tricky one. But you know what? In the past, when I was transitioning or trying to get rid of those binge urges, because it's also binging can also be conditioning. You know, when you do something over and over again, your body expects to get huge amounts of food. And calling and ordering some greasy junk food is so easy nowadays. What I did in the past for myself, I made a rule. Okay, when I want to order something or go to the next store and buy something, I made myself like a promise. Okay, for now, I stick to potatoes. And if I still want to order, I allow myself to do it the next day. You know, sometimes it sounds so silly. It's like I trick myself. But oftentimes it's helped, because when I woke up the next day, I was so proud of myself because I did not went to the supermarket. And this is something I would try. And, you know, guys, we always talk about the healthy foods part, that we should eat healthy foods. But when you binge for years or decades, guys, this urge to binge is huge. And I know Dr. Lyle once talked about that. He had a client that she had this cramming feeling or urge feelings for 3 hours. And I was like, seriously? Sometimes I had in the past the binge to urge for 3 days. I was not able to concentrate. I was not able to do my work properly. The only thing I could think about is I want to binge now. But guys, you have to know or keep in mind, this is a famine defense mechanism. And the longer you are doing this, the harder your nervous system will fight to binge. And it takes time. It took me many attempts where I get completely binge free. So I talk to people, for some, they just have the information right and they never binge again. And I have clients, it takes a couple of months or even longer, up to a year, to get binge free. And yeah, you have to grit your teeth, guys. When people who smoke or drink alcohol are able to get rid of those, with food it's easier. But you have to force yourself. In the past, when I had the urge, let's say the woman or the person who was asking this question, what to do when I want to order some junk food, every time you have to fight, guys. This is a fight. It's not easy. Just because you hear some people who are successful, you just see me with the end result. But the process was hard. It was not from now till tomorrow. It took a time to get binge free.
Great, thank you. So David says, so is a binge on health food acceptable?
Binging on healthy food acceptable?
Yeah, is it acceptable? He's asking.
My question is, how do you find binging on healthy food? On 10 pounds of potatoes or 2? Because I talk to people who think they binge when they eat 2 pounds of potatoes. But before I would binge, let's say you cannot control the urge. Before I would eat some greasy pizza, I would eat 2 pounds of potatoes. But because the worst thing that happens, you will store up some excess glycogen. Yes, I have some people, or I talk to some people that gain weight by binging on rice or beans. But these are people who are already at a healthy weight range, and their weight goes back to the weight where their naturally weight wants to be. That's the difference.
I mean, I've never eaten less than 1.5 pounds of potatoes as a serving.
Yeah.
Because I'm usually a pound of vegetables with it, but I could certainly eat 2 pounds. I don't worry about it, but 1.5 pounds usually, a pound of vegetables satisfies me. So here's a question from Mandy. So our body won't kick in with a defense mechanism while we're trying to lose weight as long as we eat enough starch?
Yes, not only enough starch, but enough calories in general. So, when we are eating a whole food plant-based diet, and when we lose weight or when you have excess weight on your body, the calorie deficit is so small that you don't even recognize it. That's the difference. Guys, you can lose weight by just being in a calorie deficit of 25 or 50 calories. And the longer the weight loss takes, the easier it is to hold the new weight. And that's the difference, because when I talk to people, they do calorie restriction diets on 1,500 calories. This is what I was doing 15 years ago. I mean, I cannot imagine how I could functioning. I always had to drink some green tea or some coffee to get out of bed because I had not enough energy. So you don't need such a huge calorie deficit to lose weight. A small one you will not recognize, like 50 calories, but this will happen automatically when you follow a whole food plant-based diet. And when you reach the healthy weight or a plateau, this just means you reach an equilibrium. When you want to lose more weight, you have to adjust a bit, but it's not a good idea for everybody, because it can happen that you fall back to restriction again, or you're not enjoying your diet anymore. And that's important. You have to enjoy the foods you are eating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see so many people say, well, I'll do your, lose weight with a full plate method after I lose the weight. And then they don't understand it. Then they say, well, the scale went up. Well, of course it's going to go up when you eat the normal amount of food. If you're eating, the weighing and measuring programs, oh my God, they give them like 7 ounces of vegetables. And it's like, they don't even let them have starch in those programs. It's crazy.
It's crazy. And you know what? Losing weight on every diet is easy, but holding your weight, that's the thing. That is not so easy. You can lose weight on every calorie restriction diet. That's not the problem. But people think then they go back just to eating normally. But guys, your famine defense mechanism will kick in.
Yeah, I love that. It's such a great way of looking at it.
Yeah.
And I love what you said about how, like if you have the urge to binge, you'll just say, well, I'm just going to wait and see how I feel tomorrow. And and it goes away. It's sort of like, Dr. Lyle says, if it's a good idea tonight, it'll probably be a good idea tomorrow.
It's a good idea tomorrow, right? It's a good one, yeah.
Absolutely. Wait, I saw Christina says, Justina, I have the same binging history and story as you. I also came from an obese family. Do you know how it's possible to become certified with Dr. Lyle and to work with binge eaters?
Yeah, just ask him, write him an email.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great. Let's see. Latif says, any thoughts on the reverse situation? People that don't eat enough, lack of appetite. I think it depends if it's the lack of appetite because of some disease process that's physical, like, or if it's just like an anorexic kind of process. So I need more information on that one. Alyssa says, I so agree. There's absolutely no need to feel guilty for eating what our bodies are designed to eat. Knowing this has been the key for me to make progress, and the pleasure trap provides the understanding. So, it's so interesting. I teach at the spas, and I starve there because they don't understand calorie density, even though they understand it to the degree that they're not really using oil and limited salt and no sugar. They give, spa portions. And it's sad that I have to, I hope they're not watching, please, that I have to go to a $5,000 a week spa and bring my pressure cooker and my rice cooker just so I get enough food, because they literally give you a half a cup of rice. And it's like, that's what so I have a dog that weighs 15 pounds and that's what she eats as a serving. That's not what somebody that weighs 119 eats as a serving. I mean, for me, a serving of rice is 2 cups, 3 cups, or how, until I'm full. But they just don't get it. And even though I give my calorie density lecture there, I think, like, you're right. I think it's the thing, like, women, to be ladylike, we can't eat large.
Yeah, ladylike. Yeah. I had a colleague back then, and she was obese, and she always ate only tiny, small portions. And on one day, she opened her some of her not a fridge, some of her, I don't know, some box or so, and there were all kinds of junk food, Snickers, and she ate it secretly, because she was hiding. And many people eat in secret because they fear to show how much food they are eating. And I always get comments about how much I eat, always. Even after 7 years on this diet, I always get comments.
So Amal says, can you cook your Instant Pot recipe on the stove if you like? Maybe.
Yeah, sure, you can.
Great, terrific. So here's an interesting point from Stacy. But saying no oil is still restriction, and people don't understand elimination and restriction are not the same thing. You eliminate a highly toxic food that's going to make you fat and sick and injure your endothelium and cause heart disease and diabetes. It is not, when you eliminate something, when you're absent from it, that is not restriction, that's elimination. And just like, saying, well, that's like saying, we say to an alcoholic, well, if I don't drink alcohol, isn't that restriction? No, that's elimination. No. Big difference.
Yeah. And that's the thing for success, guys. Regular eating disorder approaches, they are not aware of the pleasure trap, and they are not aware of the famine defense mechanism. And those both together, when you are knowledgeable in them, when you understand them, that's the moment when your prayers get answered, guys. And I will focus on understanding the pleasure trap and on the famine defense and understanding defense mechanism. And don't try to be too emotional about this. This is just, your body just wants to survive. And the pleasure trap is hijacking with our nervous system. And oil is a pleasure trap food. It's the most highly processed food we have in the world.
Well, I'm going to be honest. I did have a binge last night. I binge watched all your YouTube videos in preparation for the interview. And if you're going to binge, that's the healthiest way. And they're amazing. And you do a really great job of explaining this. So I highly recommend them. And of course, the link is in the show notes to Justina's YouTube channel and her website. Here's a question from Flower: how to stop binging on purging and vegetables? And I asked, where's the starch? Because nobody would binge on vegetables. I wouldn't say nobody would. People do binge on vegetables, but if you eat enough starch, that urge to binge gets piled down, if not gone away.
Yeah, that's the thing. So this lady is binging on vegetables
and purging.
Starch is the answer. Is starch. Have enough starch.
That's what I say. You got to have
Yeah.
starch, miles and miles and miles of starch. That is really the secret. And I know I've done videos with Dr. Lyle about this on my YouTube channel about, that carbs don't make you fat and that starch
Yeah.
is the secret to the success. Okay. I'm looking for other questions. Let's see. Yeah. And people are saying when they eat a lot of starch, they don't get hungry between meals. And that's why people are saying, well, is it okay to snack? I mean, I suppose it's okay, but when you eat starch, you really don't get hungry. I mean, except at mealtime for the most part.
Yeah.
If you're eating enough.
And you know what? Sometimes what happens in the past, I thought about I should have X amount of food for breakfast, X amount of food for lunch, and X amount of food for dinner. I had some special menu on my mind. So I thought, okay, when I got hungry, maybe 1 hour later, I ate, let's say, breakfast. And 1 hour later, I felt like, oh gosh, I need more starch. I go for a second. And sometimes it happened that I had my lunch at 11 a.m. And my dinner was at 3 p.m. And in the past, I feared, because I thought, okay, this is not possible. The day is so long. I should not have that much food early in the day. But what happened? I just ate less later. So when you are feeling in your mind in a moment or on a given time that it's not appropriate to eat, because who eats lunch at 11 a.m.? Just eat the starch. Sometimes I eat around 1,000 calories for breakfast, sometimes 500. I don't count my calories, but roughly there is no right amount to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But if you eat a lot of calories throughout the day in form of starch, it's easier, in my personal opinion, and for the people I work with.
Right. And that's what people have to know themselves. Like you say, I'm just not hungry in the morning. So to force myself to eat would be a mistake.
You don't have
People
to.
shouldn't skip breakfast because they think, oh, it's better for intermittent fasting. They should really learn to listen to their hunger signals. And because of all the restrictive dieting, they don't know when they're hungry anymore or full. And so I think the best thing people do is get rid of the scale and get rid of their clock, and then everything will be fine, just like
everything.
It
and the scale is a good point you are mentioning. I don't weigh myself anymore. I'm naturally anxious person. So when I see that, even now, after I knew all of the principles, when my weight fluctuates, it makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't like it. And I feel good in my skin. I feel healthy. So why should I weigh myself every day? It doesn't help me to eat. So because it doesn't help me in any way. For some people are fine if they weigh themselves. They don't have a problem. It's not triggering them. But if it's triggering you, so why are you doing this to you? Our ancestors, they never had a scale. They just ate the food that was there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So because somebody was saying, is it better to intermittent fast and skip breakfast or skip dinner? But I think there's no answer for that.
There's no answer here.
Because again, like I really agree with you, Justina. And like when I see people that have a history of anorexia or bulimia, and then they go to True North and they don't tell the doctors, and then they fast, I think it's the most horrible thing when they do water fasts. When they do this, it just makes their condition worse. Especially because they lied to the doctor.
Yeah. And this is a good point. You're mentioning water fast. Many binge eaters asking me if it would be a good idea to water fast to get rid of the binges. Please don't do that. I would only recommend to do water fast if it's for major health reasons. But when you suffer from binge eating, a couple of years ago, I had I was in pretty major health, or I had a pretty major health situation. So I went for a water fast for 5 days. Guys, after that, I had the biggest binge phase in my life. I binged so much. And back then I was not aware of the famine defense mechanism, and I did not know what I know now. So it's when you water fast, this famine defense mechanism is at the strongest. So I would not recommend to do water fasts when you are trying to recover from binging.
Great. People are asking if your husband eats the same way as you.
Yeah, almost. His diet is a bit more McDougall style, the regular starch solution diet. He eats a few more processed foods like pasta and bread sometimes, but a lot of our meals are almost the same. So it's easy for me. But it took him 5 years or so to follow me.
Did he know about your history of binging? Because I remember listening.
Yeah.
You binged the night before your wedding, and you were very uncomfortable in your wedding dress.
Yeah, he knew. And binging, binger, not only bingers suffer, their family members suffered too, because he was aware of it. And back then I thought, okay, this is a thing I will suffer from the rest of my life. And it was very draining also for him, but he's a lovely guy, so he still married me.
Nice. Oh, he sounds great. So people are asking if you eat dessert.
Yes, fruit. Fruit is my dessert. And my most favorite dessert is frozen fruit, especially grapes or frozen jackfruit.
Nice. Yeah, jackfruit is great frozen.
It's frozen, yeah.
It's like juicy fruit gum. It's
yeah,
so good.
Exactly.
So people are asking, but do you limit fruit?
No, I would not say that I limit fruit. Sometimes, for example, now in summertime, when the watermelon season is, I enjoy having watermelon. So I eat a lot of watermelon for breakfast, as much as I want or feel satisfied. But when I have a starch meal, I don't. The only thing I eat maybe 1 or 2 portions of fruit afterwards, because fruit is easy to overeat. And many of my clients, they experience when they eat a big starchy meal, and although they are full, and I experienced in the past myself, I could easily eat 1 pound of grapes on top because they're so sweet. But I don't portion size them or so. Because I eat so much starch and vegetables, that I don't have the need to gorge in some 2 pounds of fruit afterwards. I mean, I could, just by feeling I could, but I know I'm full, I had enough food, so I don't like to do it. No.
Yeah, absolutely. People are asking if you drink alcohol and what your thoughts are on alcohol.
No, I don't drink alcohol. For me personally, I never enjoyed drinking alcohol, and I would not recommend drinking alcohol. It's not healthy. I mean, some people enjoy having a glass of wine once in a while. I'm not 100% against that, but I cannot 100% recommend something that is not healthy for you.
Right. Well, the World Health Organization says no amount of alcohol is safe, and it's linked to cancer. It's basically poison. So, and it's a drug, and I don't think it will help people if they have binge eating.
Right.
It's okay. So here's a nice question. What is a sign of binge eating in teenagers who are hiding it?
What is the sign?
The sign, like, would you be able to, like, if somebody has teenagers that have this and they're hiding it, are there any signs or things to look for?
When they skip meals. Nice. Or they just eat very small portions of food, or skip meals, or just eat mostly when they're skipping meals.
Great. Dale says you have beautiful skin. That's from the 2 pounds of potatoes. No, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Let's see. Okay. Well, this question is it better to have starch in the morning, like oatmeal, and more lean protein and non-starchy vegetables at dinner? I'm not sure what you mean by lean protein, because we recommend 100% plants. So, yeah. Yeah,
I don't know what she means. Does she mean beans or?
Yeah, I think that might mean animals, so we don't recommend that at all. There's no fiber in animal products, just like processed food, so there's no satiety. People are saying, where do you live? You live in Germany, but you can work with people anywhere, right?
Yeah, anywhere. I'm doing consultations online through Zoom, yes.
Asti says, would you choose resistant starch or regular starch? I don't think it matters, really.
Yeah.
Yep. So this person is saying anorexia for over 15 years. So yeah, Dr. Doug Lisle recommends Dr. Sean Geisinger
Yeah.
for anorexia. He recommends, I've only heard him recommend 2 people other than himself and Dr. Hawk in all the 15 years I've known him. For binging, he recommends Justina, and for anorexia, he recommends Dr. Sean Geisinger.
Yeah.
And so if Dr.
He has good work on that.
Dr. Lisle recommends it, I'm saying there. Let's see. You never have a desire for a cookie, Lauren says?
Rarely, almost never.
Yeah.
Because when I'm full on starch, when I have, and guys, the question somebody asked about if I restrict my fruit. A couple of years ago, I restricted my fruit. I just limited to 1 or 2 portions. And that was the thing. I started to cram on or had cravings for cookies. But when I increased my fruit intake, I had less cramming for cookies or other junk food.
Yeah, I eat cookies, but they're made out of bananas and oats and fruit, so they're not like other people's cookies. But to me, they're shaped like a cookie. So yeah, a cookie feels like a cookie, but it's not what I mean. Regular people would not call that a cookie.
Cookie, yeah,
yeah. So, Latif says, "Can you mention what you eat in a day?" And do you drink coffee? I'm guessing you don't drink.
No,
yeah,
I don't drink coffee. So for breakfast, I switch it. I mostly have one day I have broccoli, a half head of broccoli or 1 head of broccoli. It depends how hungry I am. And then I have my carrot cake oatmeal with some berries, for example, or other piece of fruit. And for lunch, I have always steamed vegetables, some cabbage or so, or a soup and some salad, and with sweet potatoes and beans. And for dinner, I usually have a big salad with beans and corn on the cob or potatoes, some kind of starch. Or I like or I enjoy, I don't know if you know this in the US, it's roasted buckwheat. This is very delicious. Russians, they eat this kind of buckwheat. They don't eat regular buckwheat. They only eat roasted one. So it's very delicious when you put it on your salad. And sometimes I eat for breakfast, I switch it. In the summertime, sometimes I eat fruit, not often, because fruit that does not give me the same satisfaction as starch does. But I just enjoy eating watermelon, so I eat watermelon. And before I eat watermelon, I sometimes eat a bit of broccoli, because then it keeps me satisfied longer just by eating the plain fruit. Yeah, or I have steamed vegetables with sweet potato, Japanese sweet potato, or yams. I always switch some starch. I always have, regular white potatoes are my most favorite food or starch.
They want to know if you eat starches like pasta and bread or just the wet starches.
Wet starches. From time to time, maybe once in a month or so, I eat pasta, but rarely. Most of the time I eat just wet starch. I never eat bread. Bread was when I binged, this was my trigger food, bread. I could eat tons of bread and it doesn't keep me satisfied, bread.
Right. The fiber's been disrupted.
Yeah, the fiber.
And people want to know if you eat nuts or tahini.
No. And guys, I did an experiment. My weight was stable. And what I did, I introduced some nuts and nut butters in. And guess what happened? After 3 months, I gained weight.
Yeah, so talk about that, because I don't want to say nobody talks about it in all my private groups. This is story of every person I know that lost weight without eating nuts or seeds or avocado. When they reintroduced it, they gained weight. So how does one reincorporate that? I always tell people, if you want to eat something, or if you want to have alcohol in your diet, or if you want to have bread, you've got to find a way to lose weight eating that, because you can't ignore foods of a high caloric density to lose weight and then expect to be able to eat them and incorporate them back, because now as a slimmer person, you require fewer calories. So that's interesting. It took you 3 months to gain weight eating whole food fats. How much were you eating of them? About an ounce a day?
2 ounces. and I guess a quarter of avocado on top. So 3 portions of fat, 1 ounce of fat in the morning, 1 for lunch, and 1 for dinner. And yeah, of course, it was tasty. When you have tahini on your salad, it tastes better. Or when you have peanut butter or some walnuts on your oatmeal, sure, it tastes good. But the weight I gained was not worth it for me personally to have. And here's the thing, especially for people who cramp, sometimes it can help when they introduce 1 or 2 ounces of avocado on top of their meals. But this is a bit different with nuts. Nuts are so high calorically dense, and you easily, I mean, 1 ounce of nuts is 100 calories. This is 300 calories.
It's so ridiculous to me. And then people worry that they're going to die if they don't have seeds. And, I mean, that's what I love about Dr. Lyle is he did a whole video about that, and people are still worried that, if they're worried, they can have, do you have any flaxseed or chia seeds or anything like that?
Sometimes I have a teaspoon, but it's not a lot of calories.
We could be like roommates, because it sounds like we eat exactly the same way. And as delicious as nuts and nut butters and tahini are, the amount that I would get to eat to be this size, it's not worth it, because no nut, seed, or avocado tastes as good as thin fields.
Yeah. And I did this experiment because I wanted to figure out if I can eat smaller portions by eating more nuts and nut butters. And it was hard to determine if I was actually eating less, maybe a tiny bit less of volume, but the calories I put in with the nuts was still higher than, I don't know, half the pound of vegetables I did not eat anymore. So in total, my calories were more than by eating larger volumes of food. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Let's see. People are asking if you put anything on your broccoli and if you've ever tried California balsamic.
No, unfortunately, we don't have California balsamic vinegar in Germany. I put, sometimes I eat it just plain, and sometimes I sprinkle it a little bit on salt on top. And if I'm very fancy, I put some sriracha, but just a tiny bit. Yeah.
That's great. Let's see where I'm just so into talking to you that I'm not looking at the chat as much. They're saying you could eat pasta made of bean, but I find it's just still too processed.
It's all individual differences. Some people are doing fine. It helps them actually, because pasta and avocado can mimic the calorie density of meat, and our ancestors ate meat. So this can help to calm your nervous system, but not for all people. So maybe 1 of 10 or so does experience this. But you have to try out. When you are noticing weight gain by eating those foods, then I would limit them or eating less of them. Yeah, and when it doesn't make a difference, you can eat from time to time, once a week, some bean pasta or so.
The thing with me is if you give me anything that's pleasure trappy at all, whether it's a high fat food or a processed food like pasta, I can't moderate it. If I can't have it once a week or once a month, it's easier. Black and white is easier than gray.
Yeah, for some it's easier.
You got to know yourself, guys. That's the main thing. When you did the 3-month experiment where you were adding the whole food fats, were you doing it under Dr. Lyle's supervision?
No, no.
Did you notice you were more satisfied adding the fat? Because for me, the starch is much more satisfying than the fat.
Yeah, starch is much more satisfied. My experience was, and what I guess is the following: what happens when you're having nuts on your meal, the food in general tastes better. So you feel very satisfied just by the taste. Maybe this is something people confuse, and be aware of that some people just have less sensitive stretch in nutrient receptors. For this kind of people, for some of them, they feel more satisfied because they have very sensitive stretch in nutrient receptors. But I'm a volume eater, always was, also as a child, so it not make a huge difference. So after 3 months, I cut them all back and I gave all the nuts and nut butters to my husband. And even he has naturally slim genes. If he goes overboard on nuts or just a tiny bit, he easily gains weight. And
even Heather McDougall, who's never been overweight, when I had her on the show, Dr. McDougall's daughter said that it's 10 pounds difference for her when she eats nuts or doesn't.
Yeah.
So it's cool. I mean, our ancestors could not be eating an ounce of nuts a day. There's no way they could have the tools to open them, things like that. Yeah, this whole nut debate drives me crazy.
Yeah,
how much weight did you gain in those 3 months? Do you happen to know?
I don't actually know because I don't weigh myself, but I noticed that my pants got tighter, and I asked my husband, and he was not lying to me. So I just noticed how my clothes, how they fit.
Yeah. Well, Stacy, if you don't like the subject, you don't have to watch, but she's saying we're talking diet mentality. I don't think she understands Dr. Lyle and Dr. Goldhammer, or you and I do, saying nuts are good for the brain. They're not any better for the brain than broccoli or blueberries or kale. So if you're not overweight and not binging, you're not a food addict, knock yourself out. Not healthy. But both Justina and I have worked with hundreds, if not thousands of people that cannot maintain an optimal weight eating these high fat foods like nuts and oils. So
I mean, if you can eat nuts, then go for it. If your weight is stable, so fine, totally fine. But I have a lot of people I work with, they don't tolerate nuts in their diet. It's also fine.
Yep. Okay. Lauren says, I think peanut butter tastes better than skinny feels. That's everybody gets to decide for themselves. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I saw something here about where'd it go? Sorry about that. People are asking about the peanut butter with the fat removed, those peanut butter powders, they often have salt and sugar added. Do they have that in Germany? Here it's called PB2.
We also have PB2 peanut butter, dehydrated one. And we have one actually without salt and sugar. I don't eat them.
Yeah. Still too.
The thing is, when people start to sneak in some processed food here and there, at the end, it ends up they're eating all of the food and the weight goes back slowly but steadily.
Yep, absolutely. I love your explanation in the most recent YouTube video you did about how people vary in the sensitivity of their stretch receptors. I mean, my husband can take a couple bites of food and I'm so full. And it's like, I eat probably 3 times as much in volume as him.
Yeah.
But he's from a naturally very thin family. Yeah. His parents lived into their 90s and they were very, very thin. And, like you say, it takes a lot to activate my stretch receptors.
Yeah.
And on the other diet, I was obese and would still be obese until I learned this at True North from Dr. Lyle and Dr. Goldhammer. People are wondering if you eat tofu or edamame.
In the last year, I had a phase where I ate some tofu, and I was fine it was roughly 2 ounces, I guess, of tofu, not more. But I don't know what's in tofu. I don't digest tofu as well. But that is something I said a couple of minutes ago or in the beginning, that for some people who cram on starch or so, it can help, or it may help them to introduce some richer foods like tofu or avocado, but I would not go overboard to calm those crammings. So I'm definitely not against tofu or edamame. We have edamames at home, but I rarely have them because they're so expensive. Yeah. But sometimes I have a half a cup or so on my salad. Yeah, I'm fine with.
I think they're perfectly healthy. They tend to be high in fat, but I happen to be to soy. That's why you don't see them in my recipes.
The thing is, when I eat from now a bit of avocado and from time to time some tofu or soybeans, I don't gain weight, not at all. Yeah. Only from nuts and nut butters.
Same here. And I think in all these doctors that are pushing nuts on us, they don't understand I think what Dr. Oliveira talks about is that a woman or a person, doesn't have to be a woman, that's been overweight is metabolically different than somebody that's never been overweight. And these doctors can eat, 2-4 ounces a day.
That's the thing. Yeah.
And once you've been overweight, you're completely different. And I think one of the doctors said it has to do with, like you say, genetic differences. I think they specifically said the APOE gene. That's why some people can eat a lot of fat, like my husband, and not be fat. I mean, he literally eats peanut butter sandwiches all day and cannot gain any weight.
Yeah.
I just smell the peanut butter and 5 pounds,
Yeah,
So,
I'm the
so
same.
here's interesting. Callie says, I thought fat was supposed to be more filling than starch. Interesting. If you want to settle that debate, watch my recent interview with Dr. Terry Shintani from Hawaii. He bought Dr. McDougall's practice. He wrote a book based on caloric density, and he explains that people perceive fat as more filling because it's more than twice the caloric density. But calorie per calorie, starch is more satisfying than fat.
Yeah.
This is the work of Dr. Susanna Holt, the satiety index. So yeah, it's about calorie density again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, Christissa says, do you exercise and what's your routine?
Yes. I do resistance training 3 times a week. And in the other days, I just go for a walk, 90 minutes in total, not in one walk. Yeah. And in the past, I was doing a lot of running and bicycling and so, but I noticed a big difference in doing resistance training in my physique. And I would recommend for people, especially for people who want to lose those 5 pounds and are not able to lose those last 5 pounds on when they are already at a whole food plant-based diet. It can help to you will get rid of some fat areas on your body without losing weight. So resistance training, and it's very healthy for your bone density.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I enjoy doing it.
I just saw something. What about spicy food? Alexander says, isn't it addictive? Not if it doesn't have sugar, fat, and salt.
No, yeah. If it doesn't have sugar, yeah, that's it.
And then he says, you talk about not restricting, but not eating animal products. Isn't that restriction? I say not eating animal products is compassionate and caring about the environment.
Yeah,
so
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Chrissy says, any thoughts on skinny fat, whole food, plant-based 5 years, weight is okay, but obese fast percentage, trying jumbles, but have to be careful due to loose joints. I would say get a personal trainer like John Pierre or someone, because the only way to do that, if your weight is if you have a normal weight, is to build muscle.
Muscle. It's very important. Yeah. Building muscle.
If you have injuries. So Thando says, what about air pop popcorn? That satiates me. That's 1,800 calories a pound. It has no water, so I don't recommend it for weight loss. I'd rather have people eat the whole corn at 500 calories per pound.
I mean, if you don't gain weight eating popcorn, then go for it. If your weight is still stable, it's fine. But for most people I work with, they cannot tolerate popcorn.
The other thing is I don't know if you've learned this, but I've interviewed some like food addiction experts that say that, when people binge, they're not using a knife and fork. They're not using chopsticks. They're doing hand to mouth. And then when people eat air pop popcorn or chips or things like that, they're triggering the part of the brain that remembers binging. And that's why they recommend, these other experts, not to eat with your hands if you have binge eating problems.
When I binge with my hands. I binge with my fork. It just had to be high calorie dense food.
Yep. So Lauren says, what do you eat when you go to other people's homes or birthday parties?
Sometimes I bring something with me. And sometimes what I make is when I go to parties, I eat something before to make, because sometimes I go to parties, there are even no vegan foods, even when they're with oil. And what I do is, when I eat something at home, I'm not that hungry anymore. And I still eat some small portion of the food they serve when it's vegan. And my family knows that I'm vegan and plant-based. So they cook something for me. But when I go to other people's home, what rarely happens now in COVID times, I just eat the food they serve when it's vegan. Even if I know this is controversial, even for people who suffer from binge eating, I still eat something of the food because I'm free for many years I don't binge anymore. So it's not triggering me. But people who are transitioning, who are trying to get rid of binge eating, I would not recommend to eat outside the house some junk food, because this can trigger another binge.
Right. Do you ever work with people that have had gastric bypass because they can't eat the same large volumes of food that
Yeah. I talked to one girl who had a gastric bypass.
Yeah. And were you able to did she have binge eating as well? Because imagine that can't be.
Yeah. People think when they have a smaller stomach or they have not less room that they don't eat or don't crave junk food anymore, but they still do. But the portions are just getting smaller.
Nice.
And yeah, they can. Of course, they can binge. Even if they restrict their calories, they can have binges. They're just a bit smaller because they don't have enough room in their stomach. And then oftentimes these people are very surprised because they thought that this will be the solution for their binging. But the famine defense mechanism is not gone just by changing your stomach.
Right. And that's why I tell people before gastric bypass,
Yeah.
have a session with Dr. Lyle and learn that you can make the food larger rather than your stomach smaller. Yeah. I know it's almost 10 o'clock in Germany. So will that be your breakfast tomorrow? And did you want to show us what it looks like?
The breakfast is ready. So I'll show you how this looks like. So this is can you see it?
Yeah. Are you going to stir it up a little?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I have one here on the side already done. This is one portion, and I throw usually with some blueberries. I don't know how much this is, maybe a cup and a half or so. And what I usually do, I cook a bunch of these, sometimes 7 portions or more, and I store them in some good Tupperware. I have one from IKEA, and you can freeze them. So I always have something healthy at hand, or for my husband if he needs something for breakfast. And preparation, guys, is the key for eating.
So you can freeze that. That's brilliant. So you do a lot of batch cooking techniques.
Yeah, I do a lot of batch cooking. I can show you when we do our salads, I always have some, this is celery, cut up celery. Can you see it? Yeah. And the thing is, because my husband, he don't like cookies, and when I'm not at home or so, he always can make him a salad himself, because we always have starch prepared, some beans and rice and potatoes, and that's important. He was on a business trip a few days ago and was complaining. He said to me, I would never eat healthy when I would be married with you.
That's fantastic. So if somebody does want to work with you, how do they go about it?
They can just book a consultation through my website. It's linked in the show notes, or can write me an email if they want to make an appointment or just have questions in general. The website is linked.
Yeah. So how did you even find the work of Dr. Lyle in Germany? How did you come across it?
I came across the first point was when I watched Forks Over Knives. Then I watched his lecture on weight loss, how to lose weight without losing your mind. Then I watched your video from Fat Vegan to Skinny Bitch, and that was the point where I thought, okay, I have to meet this guy. He knows exactly what's going on.
That is
the rest is history.
That is so great. Well, I'm so glad to meet you and to know you. And I hope people will subscribe to your YouTube channel and watch all the wonderful videos, especially if they have this condition or know somebody, because you can recover, guys. It takes some work.
Yes.
But success is possible.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. If I can do it, you can do it, but you have to be aware of the pleasure trap and the famine defense mechanism, guys.
Right. And then marrying that with whole food plant-based.
Yeah, this is the perfect combination. Yeah.
All the people. Well, congratulations on your success. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Chef AJ, for having me on your show. It was such an honor to be your guest.
It's a pleasure to learn about this. I love that. The famine defense mechanism.
Yeah.
I will never forget that. Guys, if you're a binger, eat your starch. Like I say to Dr. people, just eat a damn potato.
Yeah.
That's all. Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you, Justina. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow at the special time of 2 p.m. Pacific time when we have our Father's Day show. We have the entire Scott family from Get to the Root. All the kids eat like this. They were raised eating SOS-free, whole food plant-based. They're going to be making some jacked up ribs with barbecue sauce and banana pudding, and it's all based on starch.
Starch.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Justina. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.